I didn't go to HR looking for revenge. I went because I thought that's what you're supposed to do. But after months of being ignored, dismissed, and quietly brushed aside, I learned a very important lesson. HR doesn't respond to complaints. They respond to risk. Let me take you back. I worked for a large corporate company, the kind, with glossy mission statements plastered on the walls, feel-good internal newsletters, and a very, very proud HR department. On paper, it was the perfect modern workplace, but in reality, it was a complex web held together by unspoken rules and selective enforcement of the official ones. I was good at my job. I mean, really good. My performance reviews were consistently strong. I was never late, and I never caused any problems, which, ironically, made me incredibly easy to ignore. My direct manager had a temper. It wasn't the explosive, screaming kind of anger you see in movies. It was worse. It was a slow, corrosive drip of public criticism, passive-aggressive comments, and undermining disguised as constructive feedback. It would be things like, "Interesting choice, not what I would have done," said with a dismissive smirk in a team meeting, or, "Let's hear from someone a little more experienced on this," after I'd just presented an idea. It always happened in meetings. Always in front of others, and crucially, it was never documented. There was never an email trail, never a formal write-up. It was just words, hanging in the air, designed to chip away at my confidence and authority. After one particularly humiliating meeting where my project was publicly picked apart for no good reason, I finally decided enough was enough. I contacted HR. I wrote a calm, professional email. There were no accusations, no emotional language. It was just the facts. Dates, direct quotes, and the names of witnesses who were present. I laid it all out, clear as day. 3 days later, I got a reply. It was the standard, cookie-cutter response. "Thank you for bringing this to our attention. We will look into it." And then, nothing. Absolutely nothing happened. The behavior continued, maybe even got a little worse. I followed up with HR a couple of weeks later, asking for an update. Their suggestion: "Have you tried addressing this directly with your manager?" Of course, I had. Multiple times. Each time I tried, the behavior just got subtler, harder to explain, and even easier for him to deny. It was my word against his. Eventually, HR sent a final email. They were closing the case due to a lack of evidence. I felt completely defeated. Over the next few months, I started noticing something interesting. HR was very responsive. Hoosts not dummy. They sprang into action when a project deadline was missed, and it affected a client. They moved lightning fast when a compliance issue came up during an audit. They replied instantly whenever a member of the senior leadership team was copied on an email chain. But simple employee concerns, those just seemed to vanish into a quiet, digital black hole. That's when it clicked. The light bulb went on. HR wasn't there to protect me. They were there to protect the company. Their job wasn't to mediate my personal conflict. It was to mitigate corporate risk. So, I changed my strategy entirely. I stopped asking HR to care about my feelings. Instead, I started building a case. I began documenting everything, not emotionally, not dramatically, but professionally, like a meticulous auditor. I kept a dated log in a secure, personal document. I wrote down exact quotes, the time they were set, and who was in the room. I wrote up brief meeting summaries immediately after they ended. And this was the key. After every verbal interaction that felt off, I would send a polite, professional follow-up email. Something like, "Hi, manager's name. Just to confirm our discussion from the 2 p.m. meeting, you suggested we pivot from strategy A to strategy B. I'll get started on that right away." I never accused. "I never say you embarrassed me." I just recorded the facts and created a paper trail. I was building my own evidence. Then, one day, my manager crossed a line he couldn't It was in a meeting with a major client. An error had come up, something I had specifically flagged weeks earlier in an email and proposed a solution for. which he had ignored. In front of the clients, he turned and said, "Well, this is what happens when project leads drop the ball." He blamed me for his own mistake, in front of everyone, including the people paying our bills. This time, I didn't email HR immediately. I was angry, yes, but I was also prepared. I waited. I went home and spent the entire weekend organizing everything. 6 months of documentation. I created a clear timeline of events, took screenshots of my follow-up emails, and compiled all my meeting notes. It was a fortress of facts. On Monday morning, I wrote a single .com message to the head of HR. There was no emotion. There were no threats. I just wrote one simple, powerful sentence. "I'm writing to you today because I am concerned about the potential liability for the company if this documented pattern of behavior continues unchecked, especially now that it is impacting client relationships." And then I attached the single PDF file containing my 6 months of meticulous documentation. HR replied in 17 minutes. 17. After months of silence, suddenly there was a fire. They asked for a meeting. Not next week, not tomorrow. That same day, I went into the meeting, and it wasn't just one HR rep. There were 2. Then a third. A senior manager joined the call. They started by thanking me for being so thorough. They didn't ask me if my manager had done these things. My document had already proven that. Instead, their questions were different. They asked, "How often did this happen? Who else witnessed it? Were other clients ever present during these incidents?" They weren't trying to protect my feelings anymore. They were assessing the company's exposure. They were calculating the risk. The aftermath was swift and silent. My manager was immediately removed from managing any client-facing projects. A week later, he was placed on a formal performance improvement plan. A month after that, he was quietly transferred to a different department in a non-managerial role. Then, he was just gone. His name disappeared from the company directory. There was no big announcement, no explanation. He just vanished. HR never apologized to me. They never admitted they had ignored my initial pleas for help. But suddenly, my team meetings were respectful. My feedback was delivered privately and constructively. My work was acknowledged and praised. Funny how that works? So here's the lesson I learned the hard way. HR doesn't ignore problems. They ignore problems that don't represent a clear and present danger to the company. The moment your personal issue becomes a legal, financial, or reputational risk, it becomes their #1 priority. I didn't have to raise my voice. I didn't have to threaten a lawsuit. I just had to stop asking them to care and start giving them a reason to act. Because in the corporate world, documentation isn't about revenge. It's leverage. Remember that. Thanks for listening to my story. If this resonated with you, hit that like button and subscribe for more content on navigating the workplace. Stay smart and stay empowered.